The 2026 NFL draft, it might go one of two ways, and it all starts with Arch Manning. If Manning decides to stay at Texas, it could trigger a chain reaction that influences every other top underclassman's decision. It has the potential to reshape the entire NFL draft. Now in this breakdown, I'm going to go through what the 2026 NFL draft class looks like today based on the summer scouting research that I've compiled so far. And I've spent hours diving into the tape and the analytics to identify the early strengths and weaknesses and the developmental pain points for every position group in this particular draft class. So to start off, let's talk about the quarterbacks that I currently have grades for, because like every draft class, the quarterback class absolutely sets the tone. Right now, everything hinges on whether Arch Manning declares. There's still a lot of development in his game that needs to come to fruition in 2025. But if he decides to stay at Texas, it will open the door for someone else to rise. And that will shift the entire QB hierarchy in the 2026 NFL draft. And in that scenario, it would elevate LSU quarterback Garrett Nussmeier. He would become the early favorite for QB1. And then after him, you've got a tier of talented juniors, names like Cade Klubnik, Sam Leavitt from Arizona State, Drew Allar from Penn State, all currently ranked inside of the top 50. Now, the other names out there that are considered day two prospects, all of whom have the potential to rise much higher. And that's really the theme of this particular draft class. There's a lot of high upside juniors with a lot riding on what happens this fall. Now, in that second tier of quarterbacks, you've got LaNorris Sellers from South Carolina, Carson Beck, who transferred from Georgia to Miami, Fernando Mendoza, who transferred from Cal to Indiana. That is a name to absolutely watch. Fernando Mendoza is one of those guys that a lot of scouts are really keeping an eye on right now. They're paying attention to his 2024 tape, and they are really hyped up on what his potential could be. Playing in the Big Ten at Indiana, everybody, watched Curtis Work take that next step at Indiana, transferring from Ohio University. Fernando Mendoza has even better tools in a lot of people's opinion than what Curtis Work had to offer. So it'll be interesting to kind of see if he can elevate. He's kind of a guy that could really rise into that round one discussion, especially if a few of these juniors decide to not declare for the 2026 NFL draft. Now, as of right now, the most likely QBs that are expected to declare for the NFL draft in 2026, Garrett Nussmeier, Drew Allar, Cade Klubnik, and Carson Beck. And that's based on their remaining eligibility and some of their current draft grade upside. Meanwhile, if we were to sit here and pretend for a moment that these are the final grades and rankings, that means that LaNorris Sellers, Sam Leavitt, Fernando Mendoza could all return in 2026 alongside Arch Manning, especially with NIL money in play and developmental upside still untapped for those particular prospects. All right, let's move on to the running backs, another position where early declarations will determine the strength of this class. Just like at the quarterback position, many of the top names at running back are underclassmen with eligibility left and potential NIL deals on the table. And if a player carries a fringe day 2 or day 3 grade, they may choose to stay in school rather than enter a crowded draft class. Now, we've seen it before. Blake Corum did it at Michigan a few years ago. Travion Henderson did it at Ohio State, and it paid off in a big way for him. Now, the early crown jewel of the 2026 class is Jeremiyah Love from Notre Dame. He's the one running back with day one upside. His decision could dictate whether others jump or wait for 2027. One of the players that I really love in this draft class, by the way, is Makhi Hughes, who transferred to Oregon after a breakout season at Tulane. His decision could be dictated by what Jeremiyah Love decides to do and how his 2026 season goes. Another is CJ Baxter at Texas, a former top recruit who enters 2025 in full breakout mode. And then there's Darius Taylor at Minnesota, who could absolutely push for RB2 or RB3 status in this class. So there's a lot of potential, but there's also a lot to prove at the running back position. Now, obviously, there will be risers during the 2025 college football season, but as of right now, it's not a particularly deep class. It's not very comparable to the 2025 class, not yet anyway. Could it get there? I believe that it could, but like at the quarterback position, this group is filled with underclassmen who need to take that next developmental step, and nothing is guaranteed. Now let's talk about the wide receiver class and what it looks like after a down year in 2025, at least in terms of having that true wide receiver one alpha type prospect. Now we've been spoiled in recent years with elite top end talent at the wide receiver position. The 2024 class was absolutely stacked at the top. The 2025 class, it gave us a lot of depth, but mostly in that wide receiver 2 and wide receiver 3 range, at least projection wise. So what about this 2026 NFL draft class? So far, it looks a lot like the 2025 class. Once again, this class is filled with prove-it players. There are some intriguing names, guys who could take that next big step. But even if they do, most of them project more as NFL wide receiver 2 types. And with that being said, there are a few potential risers to keep an eye on. I really like Arizona State's Jordyn Tyson. He has the route running ability, separation, and body control to really push for that wide receiver 1 role at the NFL level. Another name is Eric Singleton Jr., now at Auburn after transferring from Georgia Tech. He is another intriguing prospect, but he is a little undersized at 5'11", 180 pounds, but he's the top vertical threat that I've observed in the early summer scouting. Now, he actually leads all Power 4 wide receivers over the last couple of years in explosive yards, and with a big year against SEC level competition, he could absolutely grab the attention of NFL scouts and enter into that day one conversation. Then you have Ohio State's Carnell Tate. He's another one of those guys at Ohio State who's really just been waiting his turn behind elite level wide receiver talent. While he'll be in the shadow of Jeremiyah Smith in 2025, Tate is a player to keep a close eye on. There's some real wide receiver 1 potential there if he can see some consistent usage and production. Now, Evan Stewart, he's at Oregon. He was tracking towards wide receiver 1 profile, but he suffered a season-ending injury in early June. Now, at this point, his draft status is uncertain, and he may not be a factor in the 2026 NFL draft class, so we'll see how that transpires. Now, one of the biggest wild cards out there is going to be South Carolina's Nyck Harbor. He's a literal Olympic-level track athlete, and at 6'5", 230 pounds, he's a physical freak with rare speed, but he still needs significant refinement as a route runner. Personally, I think that he may ultimately project better at tight end at the NFL level. And he's only a junior, by the way, so he could opt to stay in school for an additional year, and he could jump into that 2027 wide receiver class. So again, just like at the quarterback and running back position, we're dealing with a wide receiver class full of underclassmen, many of whom have lucrative NIL deals and the option to return to school if they don't hit their projected draft range. But a few of these names could take that next step in 2025 and be considered wide receiver 1 or high-end wide receiver 2 potential. Okay, so let's run through the tight end position real quickly here, which looks promising again in 2026. The 2025 tight end class was deep and could end up producing several long-term NFL starters. Obviously, you had Colston Loveland and Tyler Warren at the top, but even players like Mason Taylor, Elijah Arroyo, or Rondé Gaston II could carve out strong careers. Now in 2026, we have at least 3 early names that I really like based on the summer scouting. First up is Georgia's Lawson Luckie. The issue there, though, at Georgia currently at the tight end position is going to be overall volume. It's a very crowded tight end room once again. So it's going to be tough to predict how much production Luckie will have in 2025. But when this guy is on the field, he looks like the next big time tight end coming out of Athens. Now, the next tight end prospect out there is Eli Stowers from Vanderbilt. This is a guy that a lot of people have as tight end 1. You can absolutely see why on his tape. There's a lot of buzz around this guy. He is absolutely the real deal. And he's also paired with a returning quarterback in Diego Pavia. So he'll get a chance to shine once again in 2025. And last but not least, among the tight ends that I'm going to talk about today is going to be Max Klare, the Purdue transfer who's now at Ohio State. He gives me strong Mike Gesicki vibes. I've also seen some Colston Loveland comps out there. And after watching his tape, this is a very fluid and athletic tight end. He needs to refine the inline work, both as a blocker and as a route runner. But the traits are obvious. His draft stock will likely come down to how many opportunities he's able to get in an Ohio State offense that's loaded with weapons, and they're going to be starting a new, inexperienced quarterback. Now, obviously, there are names that I haven't mentioned yet who could emerge throughout the 2025 season, but as of right now, the tight end class has real top-end talent and could match or even exceed what we had seen from the 2025 class, depending on their developmental stages and how they are utilized throughout the college football season. Okay, so let's dive into the one position group that might absolutely define the entire 2026 NFL draft class, and that is the defensive line and edge rusher group. Once again, this group is absolutely loaded. As of the summer scouting update, I've got 9 total defensive linemen or edge rushers ranked inside of the top 50, including 5 in the top 10 overall. This defensive line group could be even more dominant. It could be even deeper than what we had seen in the 2025 class. And leading the way is Clemson's Peter Woods, who could very well end up as the #1 overall pick in 2026. He's a versatile, disruptive interior presence with elite power and explosiveness. He's already proven he can line up across multiple spots on the defensive front, and he's only getting better. And right behind him is his teammate TJ Parker, a true edge rusher who complements Woods perfectly. Parker's tape shows great bend, hand usage, and a relentless motor. Both players are currently graded as top 5 overall prospects on our board, and Clemson could end up with multiple defenders going early in round 1. Now, this group doesn't just stop with the Clemson defenders. We've got Rueben Bain Jr., the edge rusher from Miami, Danny Dennis Sutton out of Penn State, Caleb Banks, interior defensive lineman at Florida, could absolutely be a first-round pick with a big year in 2025. We also have edge rusher LT Overton at Alabama, a guy who could have entered the 2025 class but decided to stay in school. These guys are all names in that day 1 or 2 mix and bring different traits to the table, from length and twitch to power and scheme versatility. This entire defensive line edge class is stacked with players who already look like NFL level starters. So if you're looking for a group that could absolutely flood the first round of the 2026 NFL draft, this is it. It's the strongest position group on the draft board right now, and it's not even particularly close. Okay, so let's wrap up the positional breakdowns with the defensive backs. This is one of those groups that could absolutely elevate and be right there with that defensive line class as the top position group in this draft class. And leading the way on my early big board is Ohio State safety Caleb Downs. And yes, he's the top graded player in the entire 2026 draft class as of right now. Now, Downs is an absolute menace. He checks every single box for today's NFL: positional versatility, athleticism, instincts, production. He can play deep safety, box safety, or nickel. He's a dynamic return man. This guy has elite film and a polished game already, and I've seen some Eric Berry comps out there, and those are justified in my opinion. Downs could be the safest blue chip prospect in this draft class, and he's the type of player you build your defense around. Now, behind Caleb Downs, we have a deep group of safeties and corners with high-end upside. Now, sticking with Clemson here, they've already got 3 defenders inside of my top 10. Peter Woods, TJ Parker, we just mentioned them playing on the defensive line. And now they have the #1 cornerback on our board anyway, and Avieon Terrell. Now, Terrell is the younger brother of cornerback AJ Terrell, who's in the NFL currently. And while he's not quite as lengthy as his brother, he's incredibly fluid and sticky in man coverage. He can absolutely transition to a nickel role at the NFL level, but his versatility gives him outside-inside flexibility, and he has absolute elite starter level traits. Now, joining Terrell at the top of the cornerback class are 2 more potential elite prospects, and that is Texas's Malik Muhammad and Penn State's AJ Harris. Now, Muhammad, he is an instinctive, balanced player, and he brings strong man coverage ability. Harris, on the other hand, is a lengthy, high IQ player who flashes elite potential on tape. Now, I've said before, he reminds me a little bit of Makhi still from Michigan with his positional versatility and his ability to slide inside or play boundary. This DB class also includes names that could absolutely rise into the day 1 conversation. Starting at safety, for example, you have Dylan Thieneman. He transferred from Purdue to Oregon this offseason. He could skyrocket into a day 1 pick with a big year in 2025. Other safeties to watch, like Alabama's Keon Sabb, former Michigan safety, by the way, USC's Kamari Ramsey, formerly at UCLA, Iowa's Xavier Nwamka, and another Alabama safety, Bray Hubbard, who took over for an injured Keon Sabb and really elevated himself a season ago in that defense. He's actually a guy with a lot of positional versatility. He could end up as more of a nickel player at the NFL level. Now, other cornerbacks of note, obviously Jeremiah McCoy from Tennessee. He's at the top of a lot of people's DB rankings, but I am sort of in that wait and see mode because of his injury status in 2025. Michigan quarterback Jair Hill is another guy who could take a huge step in 2025. He's projected to be that next big time DB out of the University of Michigan. So much like that defensive line group, the secondary group is deep. talented, and already full of players who will draw first and second round consideration. If the quarterback and wide receiver classes are still sorting themselves out, the defensive line and defensive back groups look like they could benefit in a massive way if several projected QBs do not take that next step or decide not to early declare. So to wrap things up, here's where we stand heading into the 2025 college football season. The 2026 NFL draft class is filled with potential, but also a ton of uncertainty out there. Quarterback, wide receiver, and even running back are all top heavy with underclassmen who may or may not declare depending on NIL, draft grades, and how they perform this fall. At the same time, positions like edge, interior defensive line, safety, and cornerback already look stacked. These are the groups with the most clear-cut round one talent. If the quarterback class fails to deliver on expectations, or if players like Arch Manning, Sam Leavitt, and LaNorris Sellers return to school, the 2026 draft class could take on a very different shape, and that's what makes the upcoming college football season so important. Every snap, every game, every decision matters for these prospects. I'll be tracking all of it throughout the season, updating scouting reports, refining the grades, and adjusting the 2026 NFL draft board over on our website, footballscout365.com. Speaking of our website, you can find all of our in-depth written content, positional rankings, dynasty fantasy football profiles, and draft coverage completely free, by the way, for the entire 2025 season. That's all on our website, footballscout365.com. All right, so let me know your early thoughts on the 2026 NFL draft class so far. What players do you believe could take that next big step? Are there any players that I didn't mention throughout this video? Also, let me know if there are any prospects that you would want me to take a deeper look at. Once again, I want to say thank you for watching. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so that you can stay up to date on all of our latest NFL draft content.